Hey everybody, welcome to the Playoff Podcast Episode 2. That's right, we actually made it to Episode 2. You didn't think we would, did you? Alright, so we're into Episode 2 here. I am the host, Gillmantech, Christian Gilman, also with my co-host, Derek Kenny, and we have a number of great topics for you again. But before we get into our first topic, I'm actually going to go throw a few updates out there pertaining to some of the things we talked about last week. For one, we did talk about Connor Cook and his draft projections, and also the fact that he did not go to his Senior Bowl. Well, I just wanted to say that part of his decision not to go to his Senior Bowl was due to the fact that he is working with George Whitfield, a quarterback guru that is quite renowned, and they made the decision together that it wouldn't be beneficial to him at that time. On top of that, right now his main projections are looking at either the Jets or the Broncos. So that is kind of the idea of where he might go. Other little media tidbits, little snack bites here I'll also mention pertaining to the Harbaugh spring training in Florida. They had another tweet kind of aimed at him from Ohio State's athletic director, Gene Smith, who said they had no need to jumpstart their program and would not need to practice anywhere else. To which Harbaugh did respond that he said, "Welcome back to relevance, Gene Smith, after your tattoo fiasco." Also pertaining to the Ohio State tattoo fiasco that happened back in 2013 where Ohio State was forced to vacate their bowl wins. Anyways, those are just some little media snack bites, so we'll go ahead and jump into our first topic, which has to do with the NCAA Bracket. Right now we have two of our Final Four set, both in Villanova and Oklahoma, and two remaining to be seen. So I'm going to quickly go over my projections here for the future and a couple of things that happened. Number one, Villanova beat Kansas. Kansas is out. They took away my last team I had remaining in the final championship game, and Villanova is now in the Final Four with that win, with a 5-point win, 64-59 over Kansas, which honestly surprised the heck out of me. Villanova, great team. Don't get me wrong. I had them going to play Kansas. I had them in that matchup. But I figured Kansas, with their high offense and just the scoring they've been doing lately, they were going to win that game. But Villanova held them to only 59 points, got the win, and congratulations to them. Other upsets, though. West bracket is the one that really upset my bracket the most. Oregon beat Duke. Coach K did not expect that to happen. Oregon definitely earned their number one seed, and they showed it in that game, beating them 82-68, but I just did not see it happen. Coach K has that experience. The team was doing well. I figured they would break out and they would make it to that Elite Eight, and then eventually the Final Four did not happen. Oregon did beat them, so that number one seed advanced to play Oklahoma, which then actually beat Oregon. So the number two Oklahoma team beat Oregon. They have Buddy Hield, which is a very, very, very high offensively oriented player. He's actually one of the ones that's in talk for Player of the Year right now. So Oklahoma advanced to the Final Four at that point, beating Oregon. And now we're just waiting on the two Final Four. I'm going to say right now, as far as I'm concerned, North Carolina becomes one of those Final Four, and Virginia becomes the other. Right now, North Carolina is coming against a Notre Dame team who is doing well. They just beat Wisconsin, but they're eking their wins out. They didn't have a super impressive win over Wisconsin. It was a 5-point win. Their previous game they played against Austin was only a 1-point win. They're not winning by large numbers. And I think that when they come up against a team like North Carolina, who is putting up offensive numbers like crazy, they have yet to score less than 80 in a game this tournament. They just scored 101 against a very good Indiana team. I think that Notre Dame is going to be outmatched in that game, and I think in the final 5 minutes, North Carolina is going to take over, show their dominance, and they win by 10 plus. So North Carolina, the Final Four in that projection. As far as the Midwest is concerned, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a close game, Virginia versus Syracuse. Virginia's doing well. They beat Iowa State recently by 13 points. Syracuse doing well, but they just eked a win out against Gonzaga. Gonzaga's a very good team, but it was kind of a struggle for Syracuse, but they were able to pull it off. I just don't think Syracuse quite has the power right now to deal with the Virginia offense, and I think Virginia takes that game. Related to that, also, the upset early in the bracket with Michigan State's loss to Middle Tennessee, I think it was kind of proven that was a bit of an aberration. Michigan State came in very tired. Middle Tennessee had a very, very high percentage shooting game, did very, very well, came in very hot, but then went to play at Syracuse, lost by 25, got dominated in that game, and they were out. So kind of an aberration there, but still a great upset for them, so I'm not going to take that win away from them in any regards. They played a hell of a game, but Syracuse did show them up after that. So anyways, my Final Four projections then is Villanova, Oklahoma, since they're already there, and then North Carolina and Virginia. I think my final championship game will be between Oklahoma and North Carolina, with North Carolina taking the championship, having that experience, having that drive, and just putting up insane offensive numbers. So that's kind of the situation right now. I'm going to throw it over to Derek and kind of see what his Final Four is looking like and what he thinks is going to happen.
Hi, folks. Welcome to the playoff. We are now sugar-free. Anyways, Christian did a great job of kind of already recovering the bracket, and my Final Four is completely destroyed right now. So at best right now, I'm just going to look at what's on the board, look at my projections, and look what it's going to be. And I pretty much agree. My only difference is I think that Villanova will beat Oklahoma, but I still think North Carolina, just being so good and so talented, and their heads are on straight. That was kind of the big thing. Everybody thought that North Carolina was the most talented team coming into this tournament, but the question was, could they stay focused? Could they stay on point? And could they keep that momentum rolling? And after their last few games, I don't think they've won a game that was within – no game has been within 15 points so far. So I expect them to beat Notre Dame soundly, take out the winner of the Virginia-Syracuse game, and beat Oklahoma or Villanova in the championship. Villanova actually kind of surprising that they've gotten this far, not because they're not a good team, but because in years past they've been a 1 seed or a 2 seed, and they've been eliminated usually in the second round. The last time they were in the Final Four was 2009, which doesn't seem like it was that long ago. But then you go back to the last time they were in the Final Four before that was 1985. With a team that's is historically prevalent as Villanova, to have only 3 Final Four appearances in the last 21 years is disappointing, to say the least. Good for them. I hope they keep the momentum up. I hope not just this season, but in future seasons they can get over that second round hump and continue to do well, because they are a storied program, and it's great to have a great program like that. North Carolina getting this deep into the NCAA tournament.
Well, yep, I definitely think we're both in agreement on the North Carolina thing for sure. I think final score wise, I have them going against Oklahoma, and the reason I had them going against Oklahoma is because they have Buddy Hield, who is that offensive machine. I think in the regular season when he went up against I can't remember what team it is right now, but he put up, I think, 40-some points in one particular game. And, they've got that star there, and I think that takes them over Villanova. If he shows up. If he doesn't show up, then maybe not. But sure. I think he's geared right now to show up. He had a great showing against Oregon, so I think he's ready. But I still have North Carolina with their little bit more experience. I do have them winning that championship. So I think it'll be a close game, though. Either way, I think how this plays out, I think the championship is going to be a good game. I mean, kudos to the selection committee at this point. Honestly, they predicted their seeds pretty well. We've got 2 number 2 seeds in the Final Four already. All number 1 seeds made it to the Elite 8, and we could potentially have 2 more number 1 seeds in the Final Four at this point. So depending on how the games play out later today. So not a bad selection this year.
No, not at all.
All right, so we're going to move into a new topic now. We're moving to the NFL, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the quarterback controversy we talked about last week, but just kind of in a specific area. RG3 has been picked up by the Cleveland Browns. So Cleveland has decided to get a new quarterback. They already got rid of Manziel, as we talked about before, and they're picking up RG3. And I find that kind of funny because I remember when RG3 was with the Redskins, and then the Browns drafted Manziel. And when they drafted Manziel, I remember you, Derek, specifically talking about kind of how he was like RG3.5. He was same kind of skill set, but not quite as big, not quite as fast, and he's probably going to get hurt just like RG3 he's prone to do. And so I think it's kind of funny now that they get rid of Manziel, they bring RG3 in. Do you think that's a good move? I mean, is it smart on their decision? Is RG3 going to be the guy that they can maybe rely on and end this quarterback drought of disaster that they've had, or what?
Well, I guess it depends on what you consider smart. In the short term, yeah, it's very smart, because their other option was, Josh McCown. That's not really much. Do I really think that he could be the quarterback of the future in Cleveland? No, not really. I think RG3 can be rehabbed. I think he can get his game back together, but what he needs to do is needs to go to a team where he can sit as a backup for a year or two and kind of relearn the game under, a well-known coach or a well-known quarterback, where there's no real threat of him taking over. Putting him here in Cleveland or Jacksonville, or even Oakland, even though they've got Derek Carr, I think the hype of RG3 could threaten that position. Putting him here in Cleveland, it's great for the short term. Is it great for the long term? No, I really don't think so. I think he'll make some plays. I think he'll look pretty flashy doing it. But I think this time next year, at best, Cleveland's going to be picking at the 10 spot instead of the 2 spot.
That remains to be seen. But when it comes to draft prospects now, because Cleveland drafts at number 2 this year, and if they've got RG3 now, they pulled this guy in. Do they still look for a quarterback, or do they look elsewhere? I mean, it's Cleveland. They make terrible choices half the time. But what do they do now that they've brought their quarterback in? They have their backup and their main set, whatever rotation they decide to go with. So what are they looking for now?
I mean, there's a lot of places Cleveland can improve, but in general, they have a pretty good defense. They got a pretty good offensive line. Maybe they could improve their receiving core. They could improve a running back, but I don't really know if there's anybody worth taking that high. Honestly, I would think they're going to take Chris Wentz or Jared Goff.
So you think they might actually take another quarterback, which
absolutely. I mean, they're paying Griffin a guaranteed $6.75 million in a 2-year deal.
Okay.
If they really believed in this guy, they really thought he was going to be the future, they'd sign him to a bigger contract and to a longer deal. I think he's just a Band-Aid for now.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned they might want to take a running back. If they would take a running back, I mean, who would they possibly take? I mean, the only running backs I can think of this year in this draft that are really good would be either your Derrick Henry or your Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott's probably going to be lower in the draft. I would figure Derrick Henry would be off the board first. What do you think regarding that?
Actually, I think it'd be the other way around. Ezekiel Elliott's a better prototypical NFL back. He's a little shorter, but he's a bit thicker, heavier. He also ran a faster 40 time. A lot of people have him projected to go in the first round in a top 20 pick. Everybody else has Derrick Henry going anywhere from the end of the first round to the second or the third round.
That's interesting. I find that interesting. I mean, I know you've preached this before that Heisman does not equal great NFL talent, but Derrick Henry, he was a pretty dominant player in the college league, and he did really well. I'm surprised he's going to be drafted so low. Is it just a bad year for running backs and not many people need them, or is he just not going to translate well?
I think it's a couple things. Well, first of all, with running backs, it's been kind of a trend lately where running backs have been dropping lower and lower in the draft. Because they're becoming less and less important. But Alabama is known for their great running backs behind amazing offensive lines. You're not going to have the dominance of an Alabama offensive line against most of those defensive lines at the NFL level. You'll still have really good offensive linemen, but they'll be going up against really good, consistent defensive linemen. So you're not going to have those amazing holes. And if you look at a lot of these running backs that have been drafted from Alabama, Trent Richardson and Mark Ingram, guys like that, they're not really translating very well. The only guy who's translated pretty well is Eddie Lacy, and even he's had his ups and downs. It's not like he's been a consistent, great running back in the NFL.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, just kind of curious about that because a lot of people are really high on Derrick Henry, and so just having him drop lower in the draft like that, I was kind of looking for a reason, but that makes sense.
They're high on him. They're not high on him as a top NFL running back for the next, he's not Emmitt Smith, and he runs like Emmitt Smith. And that's the problem. He's going to get hurt.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's go over a little bit here. We can leave the quarterback controversy and the draft stuff behind for a minute. Let's go into some more NFL news here. This week there was a series of new rules that have been adopted by the NFL. I want to cover two of the main ones that interested me. The first one being, we'll go over this one first, is the new kickoff rule. The new kickoff rule now is if you have a touchback, it's going to come out instead of the 20-yard line to the 25-yard line. I found this interesting because they started doing this in college a couple years ago. Now college, the college level took it a little bit further. They also made it so the kickoff was from the 35-yard line. So, but the big reasoning behind it for the NFL and for the college level was injuries. They're trying to prevent injuries, especially in one of the parts of the game that tends to be the most injury prone because you have your entire special teams, your entire kick returning team all running at each other full speed. These are huge guys. They hit each other at really high speeds, huge impact, and there's a lot of possibility for injury there. And so I think
Hmm.
they're trying to eliminate that a little bit by bringing the kickoff touchback further forward, 5 yards more forward. They're hoping that people are gonna think a little bit more before they decide to return that kick. They might just decide to take the touchback, get the 25, and go from there.
Hmm.
Do you think this is a good idea, a bad idea? Do you think their reasoning is even relevant, or what do you think?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I don't know how effective it's necessarily going to be, because you've got guys like Antonio Cromartie a couple years back catching a ball at the end of the end zone and running it 109 yards back to take it to the house. I think football players naturally, unless they're told by their coaches, consistently take the knee. If they think they can take it, they're going to try and take it, even if it results in a loss of down or a loss of positive yardage. I mean, how many times have you and me watched on a Saturday a guy take it out of the end zone and get to the 11?
Yeah,
And
no, that's very true. I mean, you're obviously not gonna eliminate the competitive spirit that these guys have. I mean, so if they think they can get it, they're gonna try. They're not gonna be thinking, oh, I might break my leg. They're thinking, I'm getting it down to the other side. So, I mean, I agree with you to that degree. I know that there's been a lot of controversy lately about concussions and injuries in the NFL, and especially after guys retire and things of that nature. And they're trying to correct that a little bit to the best that they can. But honestly, I mean, I'm kind of indifferent to this rule. I
Mhm.
could take it or leave it, but I guess there's probably a little side of me that's like, just stop changing the game. It is what it is. Leave it and just let it play out as it plays out. These guys know what they're doing when they go into this. They know that the possibility of injury. They know the risk. They know what is going on. They're taking that of their own volition. So just let it be.
The
But
problem with that is they've known it for years, and now there's $100 million lawsuits that are directed at the NFL. So what
right.
the NFL is doing to counteract is saying, look at all these rules we're changing to make it safer.
Oh, of course, I know it's definitely a PR stunt. A lot. I'd say it's more of a PR thing than anything else. But
Exactly.
and I get that, and in our litigation happy society, that's going to happen. But um, I guess to me, it's a non-issue really. But so let's move on to the second rule. I guess there was more rules, but there was a ton of rules actually. I think you said there was 7 total. But
Mhm.
another one of the main rules that they changed, which I found interesting, was that now 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and you're out of the game. And
Yes.
one of the things that a lot of people are crying foul on, that are people are concerned about, is this might change the kind of dynamic of how some teams play, because they're
Mhm.
worried that if a guy gets an unsportsmanlike conduct, he gets his first one, they're worried
Mhm.
that the other team is then going to intentionally maybe throw in a third string guy or a starter who only has one or no penalties at that point, and try and use them to egg this person on, especially if it's a star player, and get them kicked out of the game. And so I don't. Yeah, that's. I don't know if I agree with that completely. To be honest, that's kind of up there. But I guess I could see some people
It's
trying.
I was going to say it's been done in other sports before, and I'm sure it's even been done in football where guys are thrown in to take another player out. It's not the cleanest part of the game, but it's been done before. That fear doesn't shock me at all. Um, the thing is also this is more. It's not so much about the 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. This is actually the idea is to give referees more freedom to eject players if they feel it to be necessary. That's the idea. Also, if you get 2 unsportsmanlike conducts, it's not you're automatically ejected. It's up to the referee's discretion. So the referee can, if he sees something that's particularly egregious and he's worried that it could escalate and become worse, he can then eject a player. I think this isn't going to turn into baseball where guys are kicking dirt up at each other's feet and throwing them out. But I understand why players are concerned about that um, certain type of tactic. At the same time, if you do that, though, you're also sacrificing a mismatch. If a guy's a third string player, usually that first string player will probably dominate him uh, in whatever position it is.
Yeah, I
Um,
would agree with that. And I guess now that you've clarified a little bit there that it's up to the ref's discretion, I think that would be a poor tactic to use. I think it would be a
mhm.
more relevant tactic, although a dirty trick, dirty underhanded one, a more relevant tactic if it was an automatic second when you're out. So with the
Yes.
ref's discretion, if they see that the egging on, they might be able to kind of make that call. Well, no, this guy's just trying to rile him up. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna fall for that kind of thing. So
Sure.
okay, so I don't think that the argument then holds water at that point, really.
honestly, I don't know how much this is going to affect the game until we actually get through a full season and we actually see incidents of it being implemented correctly or incorrectly, and to reevaluate what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. And I believe the NFL already even stated this is like a year test rule. They're testing it out for the season, see how it plays before determining whether they make it permanent or not.
Right.
So that it could be completely changed. It may not even exist next year for all we know. It'll just, wait and see mentality is kind of the best we can hope for. But we're going to move over now back to the UFC, actually. There was actually a new ruling this year. I know that got you really excited. New York has legalized the MMA. I think they were one of the last holdouts. All 50 states now have the MMA legal. This is huge from a marketing perspective because New York is a huge market when it comes to sports, whether it be boxing, football, baseball, whatever. And this opens up a whole new avenue of revenue and for shows and for matches. And I kind of like to get your take on what the impact's going to be, if it's going to be huge. I mean, what's going to come of all this?
Well, the first thing that's going to happen, and the thing I'm the most excited about, is Madison Square Garden is going to have its first mixed martial arts competition, whether it's UFC, Bellator, whoever. And I think it's going to completely change the game because of the history of that building. It's kind of sad it's taken this long. The last state to be legalized before New York on March 22nd of 2016 was Connecticut. That was October 1st, 2013. And it looked like this deal with New York was a done deal because it was almost like a domino effect. Wyoming at the beginning of 2012 became legal. Vermont in the middle of 2012 became legal. New York had their first vote in 2012 and voted it down. And then Connecticut voted it in 2013. So it looked like it was a done deal. Then they had a vote in 2014, voted it down. A vote in 2015, they voted it down. Finally, this year in 2016, mixed martial arts is legal. And I don't fault anyone who voted against MMA, but I would hope that if you're voting against MMA, you're aware and you've read statistics, and you're also against boxing for the same reasons. Just to put things in perspective, mixed martial arts in its 20 plus year history has had 4 recorded deaths, which is terrible. But according to the U.S. Department of Health, boxing has an average of 10 deaths a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. And not a lot of people know things like that. And I don't blame anybody who voted against it, but I would hope if you voted against it, you were educated and you understood what you were voting for and why you were voting for it. There's a lot of speculation about what the first fight in Madison Square Garden is going to be. I would have thought it would be Chris Weidman versus Luke Rockhold 2. For those of you who don't know, Chris Weidman is a New York native and the former champion. He just lost his title, Luke Rockhold, and it's going to be one of the biggest fights of the year. Sadly, that fight is already booked for Vegas. So I don't know what the first card's going to be, but it's going to be huge. And I think it's going to completely change the game as far as advertising goes, as far as revenue goes, as far as attention goes. Because as big as Vegas is, there's nothing quite like the Garden. It really is a magic building, especially when it comes to sporting events. I remember back in 2009 when Kobe Bryant scored the most points of any player in the Garden of 61 as a Laker, and the New York fans are chanting Kobe, Kobe, Kobe. You wouldn't get that in any other arena in this country where fans are cheering for an opposing player just because of the amazing performance they're putting on. There's other things too. Obviously, there's the greatest fight of all time, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. There's many great fights in that building.
Okay, so you were talking about potential matchups there, and do you think maybe I still, it hasn't been solidified, but the rumor mill's still turning. The Diaz McGregor rematch. Do you think maybe that's a possibility to be shown there at the Garden?
I was thinking that myself, but UFC 200 has already been booked for Vegas as well.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah, I was in July. I thought that was going to be it. I thought they were going to change venues and they were going to make UFC 200 at the Garden. I think that would have been perfect, but
well, it would have been momentous 200th match, at the Garden. But once a venue's booked, especially this close to the match, it's kind of hard to change out. So we're going to kind of move in now to our final segment here, and basically, for the audience's knowledge, both me and Derek here are both very big college football fans. I happen to be an MSU fan, diehard MSU fan. He happens to be a diehard U of M fan. It makes for some heated arguments sometimes, which is fun. But
it's okay to forgive Christian. We all know he's got something wrong in his head, but it's okay.
Yeah, if wrong is right and this is opposite world, then yes. But anyways, we're going to both just give some quick updates and projections for our teams coming up this future season. I'm going to start out with MSU. Now, MSU, for any MSU fans out there, knows that we have a major rebuild coming ahead of us. We had, a solid core of seniors last year. We are losing 20 seniors this year. 3 of them are coming back for 6 years of eligibility due to injuries and such. But we are, of those 20 seniors that we're losing, 11 of them were starters. That is a huge amount of starters to lose on any team at any time. Particularly that 6 of them are linemen. 3 of them are offensive linemen, 3 of them are defensive linemen. That includes names such as Shalik Calhoun and Jack Allen and Jack Conklin, all very good draft possibilities. So it is going to be a huge rebuild. When it comes to linemen, there's going to be a lot of shuffling around, a lot to do. I can't even speculate at who's going to fill all those holes. One person, though, I will mention is Ed Davis, who was coming into last season, was a projected All-American, was projected to be an amazing draft pick. He was going to go high in the draft after that. He was a star at the money position in the offensive line. He went down in fall camp before the season even started with a knee injury and was out for the season, so they really never got to see what he could have done. He's coming back for a 6th year of eligibility. He's recovered off of his knee surgery, and we're going to see if he can actually recover from that. I mean, obviously, a lot of players, they suffer after, serious injuries and surgeries like that, and sometimes never can come back to, the dominance they had before. So it remains to be seen on, how well he does at that point. But the biggest loss that is a lot of people is interested in is the loss of Connor Cook, our main quarterback for the last few years. He put up some of the best offensive numbers, some of the best, just quarterback play in the history of MSU, and he is a huge piece that has to be replaced. There is a 4-way potential battle right now. We have our senior in Tyler O'Connor, we have a junior, 4th-year junior in Damian Terry, and then a redshirt freshman in Brian Lewerke, and a true freshman in Messiah DeWeaver. The look right now is that it's going to be Tyler O'Connor, that senior. He is going to take over that position, but D'Antonio likes to keep that battle going till at least the first 2 or 3 games in the season and see who steps up and solidifies himself. Personally, I think in that regard, I think that Tyler O'Connor is the best choice to begin with, but really I kind of hope that one of the lower classmen, particularly Brian Lewerke, is a redshirt freshman. He might actually be a sophomore now I think about it, but I kind of would wish that he could step up and show some talent and maybe solidify himself at that position, because then we have someone going forward that would last us a few years. Tyler O'Connor is a 5th-year senior. He's gone after this year no matter what. Damian Terry, who is a decent guy, he's a decent quarterback. I don't think he could be the main guy. He's our 4th-year senior. He has some decent legs under him. He's great when he's used in things like the Wildcat formation and special plays of that nature, but I don't think that he's going to be the guy that we really are going to rely on. So I'm kind of hoping that redshirt freshman Brian Lewerke is going to be the man to step up. But that all remains to be seen. We are just underway now into spring practice. A lot of that's going to shake itself out in the beginning of the season, hopefully. But my projection, I guess, for this year, for the MSU team as a whole, it's going to be kind of a middling year for us. We are rebuilding a lot of positions, as I've talked about. 11 starters gone. It's just going to be a very, very, very big change and a lot of shifting around to try and get a new dynamic going that is cohesive and works well together. You got to get some cohesion between new receivers coming in and the new quarterback situation, offensively, defensively. There's so much going on that I think it's going to be a good season, not a great season. I think we'll probably end up 4th, 3rd, maybe even go down to 5th in the Big Ten. We're not going to fall to the end of the pack. I don't see that happening. I don't think D'Antonio will let that happen. And I think we have enough depth at a few positions that will be okay. But I think our main losses will probably come to Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame, and then maybe 1 or 2 others beyond that, kind of at a wild card. So I see us probably 9-4, 8-5, somewhere in that range at the end of the season. Won't be a great season, won't be a terrible season. It'll be kind of similar to the 2012 season, which right now with MSU being high, and fans being high on how well we've done lately, it'll be a terrible season to them, and it's tough. But I think we need to prepare ourselves for a little bit more of a mediocre season and just hope for a better season. So that's kind of, I think, projection-wise for MSU right now. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. We just started our spring practices. We're only 2 in. We usually start our spring practices a little bit later than the rest of the Big Ten does. So there's a lot to be resolved, a lot to be figured out. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go ahead and end my little spiel on MSU here with just 2 more quick things to look out for. I think there are 2 players that MSU fans should keep an eye on this year. First one, incoming freshman Donnie Corley. He was actually a guy that we were recruiting heavily. We were battling between, I think, Michigan and Ohio State for him. It was actually kind of a dual battle going on between him and then also Lavert Hill. He's a receiver. Lavert Hill was a cornerback. They both came from the same high school, both highly recruited out of Michigan. We were battling mainly Michigan for both those players, and one went to one went to the other. We got Donnie Corley. Lavert Hill went to Michigan, which was actually surprising to a lot of people because they figured they would go together. They were great friends. They came off of that high school team that won their division. They played really well, and they figured they'd go together. But Lavert Hill, I think, was he decided to go to Michigan because his brother's there for one, and I think that was a big factor for him. So, anyways, Donnie Corley, the guy that we're supposed to look out for, though, he's coming into Michigan State football now. Highly recruited as a receiver, but he has that skill set. He has great hands. He has a great vertical jump. He's very quick. I think he has a very good football IQ for his age. I think he could actually probably split time between receiver and cornerback, which is another position that we kind of have to look at. So look out to see him this year be playing both spots, coming in, actually getting playing time as a true freshman, and potentially making an impact right away. The second player I'd say to look out for, LJ Scott. He is now a sophomore coming into the game. He played last year. He split the running back rotation with 3 other guys at most, sometimes only 2. But he was making an impact last year. He showed bursts of greatness, and I think he really is going to step up this year as our #1 running back. He'll cement himself at that spot, and he's just a great guy to keep an eye on. I think running back is the one position coming into this season that we don't have to really do any refitting. We don't really have to do any reworking. We just have to have a guy step up one more step and take that spot as the #1 running back. So LJ Scott, Donnie Corley, 2 great guys to look out for in the upcoming MSU season. And hopefully we'll have a great season. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out, but my projection stands that it'll be probably a middling season that some will view as mediocre, but you must understand the circumstances. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Derek, and he can give any updates and projections he wants on his U of M team and go from there.
Yeah. One thing I'll say real quick on MSU, despite the fact I despise them so much. I forgive you, though, my friend. D'Antonio, like him, love him, hate him, whatever, I think maximizes the potential of players better than just about any other coach in the game. He doesn't always he recruits well. Don't get me wrong, he recruits very well, but you never see him in the top 10 or top 20 recruiting classes, yet his team consistently finishes in the top 10 or top 15 in the nation, and that's because he takes guys who are good or above average and he makes them into really special players. For a rebuilding year 9-3, that actually wouldn't surprise me at all. Maybe 10-3, depending on your bowl game. You could do better than that. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Michigan State is constantly overachieved, and I don't mean that like in a way like you have bad talent. It's just like you have very good talent and you tend to make it great. So I think Michigan State's going to be just fine. They might take a step back this year, but they'll take a step forward the next 2 years. The big question is, which you already touched on, is their quarterback issue. But every time it looks like they're going to be in trouble, D'Antonio seems to find a way to make it work. Michigan, on the other hand, is kind of the other way around. We're not so much rebuilding because we didn't lose a lot. We lost Jake Rudock, who a lot of people didn't really have that highly touted before the season began anyways. He left Iowa. He wasn't good enough to play at Iowa, and he lit people on fire at Michigan. I think that goes to the credit of Jim Harbaugh and his reputation as the quarterback whisperer. Took a guy in the NFL, Alex Smith, who everybody else had considered a bust, and turned him into a Pro Bowl level quarterback and took him to an NFC championship. He took a guy in Colin Kaepernick, who everybody had designated as a running quarterback, and turned him into something truly special. And if you have any doubt about Jim Harbaugh's ability, look at how those 2 guys are doing without Jim Harbaugh. Not great, not terrible, but definitely not great. As far as Michigan goes, losing Jake Rudock, it looks like it's going to probably be John O'Korn um, who from everything, I don't know a lot about him personally, but from everything I've heard, he's a stud. They just recruited Brandon Peters from Indiana, who is very highly recruited. The guy they got from Texas, Zach Gentry, the 6'8" quarterback, is supposedly getting moved to tight end with Jake Butt, who decided not to go to the NFL draft, despite probably being a first round pick. Wants to play one more year with Michigan. So you got two really good offensive tight ends. J.U. Cheston's coming back as a fifth-year senior, which is great. Devin Smith is coming back for another year. So our offense looks to be clicking. A lot of the same offensive linemen, fifth-year seniors, and just fourth-year seniors, which is great. On the defensive side, we got that kid, Rashawn Gary, the number one recruit in the nation. It's actually kind of funny. On the defensive line, they've got two fifth-year seniors and two freshmen. So that's a really interesting dynamic for their defensive line. And the last guy I'm going to bring up is, probably the hardest guy to take care of either on offense or defense, in Jabril Peppers, who is just an amazing athlete for the Michigan Wolverines. And that seems to be what Harbaugh likes. Harbaugh likes those athletes, those guys who can shuffle around and move and fit them wherever you'd like. And we'll know a lot more in a couple of days at Michigan's spring game. But just looking at their schedule, just going down the line, I really only see 3 tough games for Michigan. That'd be Spartans at East Lansing, Hawkeyes at Kinnick Stadium, and the Buckeyes at Ohio State. I think for sure we're going to win one of those games. I'd like to think 2. I don't think we're going to beat Ohio State at Columbus, though. They're just too good. They got too much of a head start. Urban Meyer's got that thing clicking on all cylinders. They don't rebuild. They just reload. I think in a couple years, though, it's going to be really scary for whoever the Buckeyes play in the Big Ten, because guys are consistently getting better. A little bit of a side note on Michigan that I find a little funny is Michigan and Texas are changing their schedule for the 2024 and 2027 years accordingly, and I find that quite hilarious because they're deciding football games where the players are right now 6 to 10 years old. So I don't really think I think that's a little bit ridiculous that you're planning that far out in advance when you don't know what your program's going to look like. You don't know if you're going to have any of the same coaches. You're not going to have the same players. I think scheduling that far out is a little ridiculous.
Well, a couple things I'd like to just talk about really quick, just mentioning on a couple things you talked about. I think
Sure.
that Jake Butt coming back, especially when he was probably guaranteed a first round, if not a high second round pick, shows a lot of integrity and shows a lot of commitment to your team. I like seeing when players do that. I mean, that happened last year for MSU with Shalik Calhoun and Connor Cook coming back when they were, looking at high draft picks. But that shows a lot of commitment and a lot of involvement and a lot of investment into the team you're playing for. And I think that's an honorable and very, very integrity-driven thing, and I like to see that. So good for him. Additionally, I did not realize Jake Rudock was gone this year. I guess I for some reason I thought he was either a fourth-year senior or a junior, so I figured he had one more year. But I will say that bringing him over for Iowa was a great thing for Michigan because before that he wasn't really all that special. And the funny thing on the other end of that is it actually worked out for Iowa too because they had C.J. Beathard come in and actually have a great year. So, kind of worked around for everybody. But yeah, I mean, so that's awesome. I think we're going to have a very interesting year this coming year for sure, both Michigan State and U of M wise. It'll be, as they say, you got to let the games play out and see where the chips fall. So it'll, just see how things turn out. But very, very curious to see how things also go in the spring games. You have Michigan's coming up here soon, and then Michigan State's in a week or two. And we'll kind of get a better idea at that point of who some of our starters might be and how they're looking this far into the season. So, or the off season, I should say. But anyways, all right. So I think that's about all the topics we wanted to hit on for the day. I want to thank everybody for listening out there. Thank my co-host Derek Kenny for being here and providing all the information that he provides. We will be back again, hopefully next week, with all kinds of relevant sports information, including probably the final talks on the NCAA Tournament Bracket, on seeing who made it to the national championship and where things have gone. So
And we're wrong again.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, you've got no one left in the Final Four. I've got one left in the Final Four. It's very possible that I'll have none left. I have none left in the national championship. So I'd be very curious to see how that went. But, every year people seem to be surprised at all the turmoil that happens in these brackets. And yet, they don't realize that it happens every single year. Anyways, thank you all for coming out. And hopefully we'll have you all coming again next week for more information and more sports news from the playoff.